What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Identity Jedi Show. It is holiday season. By the time you're seeing this, listen, we're just a couple of days away from Christmas, and man, do we have a lot to get into. But first of all, before we get into that, wishing you and yours a very happy holiday season. Merry Christmas to those of you that celebrated. For those of you that celebrate Hanukkah, happy Hanukkah. And for those of you that celebrate other holidays, have a very happy and safe holiday season. We got a lot to talk about, man. We have a $700 million Series B that popped up. We got a $1 billion exit for one company. And we got another one that kind of snuck between the radar there, $11 billion by a blue blood. We're going to get into all of that and more right after the break. Welcome to the Identity Jedi Show. We'll be right back.
Started from the bottom, kept on climbing, perfect timing, looking down from the top. I don't see no opposition from my position. I'm focused. It's the must, I complete the mission. I won't stop, I can't stop. The grind is all I know. I'm focused, I can't stop. The hustle's all I know. I'm hungry, ambitious. My heart is on go. You in the presence of greatness. That's all you need to know.
Okay, guys, welcome back. Listen, we got a great episode for you. We got a hard-hitting interview for you. Like, me and special guest Lee Tschetetter are going to get into just a hard-hitting, no-holds-barred interview, just talking about the industry and some of the things that are just, quite frankly, wrong, and some of the things we need to discuss about. It was great chopping it up with my guy Lee. We're going to get to that in a second. But, there was some big news that happened the last couple of weeks in the identity and access management world, really the identity security world. But before we get into all that, guys, what we got to do. We got some housekeeping we got to get done. Listen, make sure you are locked into the Identity Jedi universe. Head over to theidentityjedi.com. Make sure you're subscribed up for that, because we got the newsletter that's dropping every other Wednesday coming into your inbox. We got blogs dropping on Monday. For your premium subscribers, listen, the Identity Jedi AI is back. You can check that out. Also, make sure you are locked in, like, rate, subscribe, whatever platform you listen to this on. It all goes a long way. We appreciate it. Listen, we finished once again this year in the top 25 of videos on the Spotify platform. So thank you. If you're listening on Spotify, make sure you go ahead and like, rate, subscribe to the content. Keep following. We want to get those numbers up. Listen, we are looking to get into the Spotify partnership program, and we need your help for that. So follow us on Spotify. Go ahead, get those numbers up. We're going to be doing that going into 2026. We got some big plans. So do all the things, people. Like, rate, subscribe. YouTube, continue to run up the numbers. We appreciate it. All goes a long way. So there's the housekeeping. That's all done. Let's get into some news. Guys, listen, a lot of big things going in identity security. One of the biggest things the last couple of weeks, it was announced, Gartner Week, Savient launched their big Series B, $700 million. One of the main backers was KKR. You can go check out the press release. I'll drop the notes in there. This is not an official statement coming from me. Just, yes, I am an employee of Savient, but just really just from the news, from an identity security standpoint, this is a pretty big deal, right? So big numbers there. Kind of really announces, Savient as one of the big players coming out there. It's interesting to see KKR, one of the, premier private equity firms out there, stepping up and just kind of putting their stamp on there. So it's going to be interesting to see how that affects the market kind of going forward, and what that means for Savient as a company going forward, and the growth that we can expect to see from them. And then following that, or kind of before that, on the heels, ServiceNow makes a big acquisition, $1 billion for Vesa, snapping them up and bringing them into the fold. And then following that up with another acquisition for, I believe they're entering into agreements for Artemis, right? And I believe that's valued at, I think they're paying $6 billion for that one. So don't quote me on that, but there's some numbers on there. I will drop all these links in the description. You guys can go and look at this. So some spending going on at the end of the year in the identity security market. And it's interesting for ServiceNow to kind of like gear up and kind of make these purchases and acquisitions. But guys, this is no surprise. We've been seeing this in the identity security market, for the last couple of years, right? And I was having some conversations with, some of my colleagues. And when I look at this, I kind of see this lining up to be kind of two things, right? And I think the bets going forward is that, yes, we're seeing consolidation, absolutely. And I think the bets that there's going to be kind of two main platforms. There's going to be an IT services platform, right? And so there's going to be consolidation on that market, and there's going to be a security platform. And I think what we're going to start seeing is vendors are going to start to line up and say, okay, who's going to be your straight IT services play? And so you're going to get most of your IT services from one specific vendor, or one to two specific vendors. And so if you consider certain things IT, you're going to consolidate on that platform or those platform areas. And if you consider security, you're going to go a different direction. And I think you're going to see the vendors kind of line up to that. And if you start to look across the acquisitions and how the players are lining up, that's kind of how things are lining up, to look at that, right? You get Palo Alto and CyberArk, and you can see the things going on, that side from the security perspective. And so for those organizations that truly look at identity as part of security, right, they're going to lean towards that, that Palo Alto, CyberArk, a true identity security play where identity fits more into the security side. And so they're going to look at more of, hey, we're going to want to see a security vendor more leaning into the identity side. But for those organizations that still think identity is more of an IT play, then I can see the ServiceNow Visa acquisition and going that way. Like, hey, we want identity straight, coming from our ServiceNow platform. We want ServiceNow everywhere. We want everybody kind of integrating into our ServiceNow platform. And this is how we're putting this out through our business, because we really just see identity as, more of an IT function, which in some organizations, let's just be fair, identity is an IT function. I don't necessarily agree with that, but some organizations, that's how they operated. And to some organizations, maybe that's all they need. Right now, can we debate and say that they need to do more? Absolutely, we can. But the reality, as we all know, is that some organizations do run it that way. And so we can start to see these bets play out in the market. Another interesting acquisition that I want to bring up was IBM, right? Made I believe it was $11 billion. I should have looked this up, guys. Sorry, I was being lazy. I didn't feel like pulling all these things up. And I could pull them up right here on the screen, but I'm not going to do that. Why not? But IBM, actually, this one I will pull up. Sorry, I'm going to do this one. IBM made an acquisition, and it was a data platform acquisition. Let's pull this one up, guys, right now. Acquire Confluent, $11 billion. So IBM to acquire Confluent to create smart data platform for enterprise generative AI, $11 billion acquisition. And this one didn't make as much noise. And it was funny, same group chat, I'm talking to my colleagues. And this one caught my eye for this reason. IBM, big, huge player. They've been around forever. $11 billion is a lot of money. And I look at this and I go, we've said for probably the past 15, 20 years, data is the new oil. But when you look at this specifically around generative AI, right, they make this play, I think, specifically because they want to go after the true source behind everything that's going to be driving generative AI. So if you're going to make a bet on AI, right, everybody's diving into, how to who's going to own AI, who's going to secure AI, hey, to create all these AI agents, right? AI everywhere. And you can make your bets and put your money where all these things are going to be managed. No problem. IBM's been in this AI game probably before most of these organizations, right? Watson's been around for a lot longer than most people realize. And so IBM's going to be involved in most of these. But let's be frank, guys, when it comes to enterprise, enterprise cloud infrastructure, enterprise software, IBM's not really in that game, right? I could be wrong. Let me know. But I just don't think the numbers are there. We don't hear them when it comes up. The AWSs, the AWSs, the Googles, the Microsofts, Oracles even. We don't really hear IBM that much in that game. However, if you're going to be building out these generative AI applications, if you're going to be building out agentic AI applications, data is what these things are running on. Because agents in themselves, AI in itself, right, needs data to process it. And what we're seeing with this shift with AI truly is separating what we currently know of applications, right? It's deconstructing the current application and turning it into the business logic that us beautiful software developers, took all of this, our wonderful knowledge and code, and we made all these complicated things, and we charge customers, 10, 15, 20, 30, 40, 50x, right? Was the business logic. That's what we did. We took data, we wrapped it around with all this business logic and all the C+ and Sharps and all the things and Java and all that stuff, put a user interface in front of it, and we say, here you go. And AI is coming in and going, yeah, well, we're going to take all of this stuff, right? All of the stuff that we wrapped around it, the business logic and all the coding, and the user interface, right? We're going to take that and we're going to grab the data and we're going to replace all of that with a simple prompt and reasoning. And so with that, the user can interact directly with the data, and we can create simple interfaces. In fact, with the reasoning model in between there, we can generate the interfaces. So this doesn't really need to be as pretty anymore, the interface, right? So we can actually get rid of that, and we can just go directly to the data. Now, that means I need to connect and get to more and more data, and the ability to connect to that data and make sense of that data quickly. Wow, now that becomes paramount. So when I see this, I see IBM coming into this and go, okay, well then if I can get to more and more data quickly, and I want to be able to do something useful with this data, well, it's going to make sense that I want to be in the game of making data available and stitching data available to my generative AI applications as easy as possible, because now I can enable the business to create smart data lakes very quickly. So I think this is I look at it as a very strategic, smart play for IBM. We'll see, right? Everybody's saying that AI is a bubble. Maybe it is. I don't think it is. I think we're seeing the first wave of it. And I do think that we've got some bubble-esque features of the first wave, right? We're all creating the same thing because we don't really know what to do with this technology, right? It's exciting to all of us. But I think as we get used to it and realize like the power of the things that we can do, I don't think that the use of AI and the technologies is going away, right? We are going to fundamentally shift the way we create things. And I don't think that's going to change. So interesting times indeed, friends. Let's get you over to this interview with special guest Lee Tschetetter. It's going to be a great one. Hope you enjoy it. Again, wishing you a safe and very prosperous holiday season. Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, all the things. We'll see you after the break in the interview. Guys, we're going to get into it because we're in that kind of mood today. We're just going to talk about what is going on, what's going on in the industry. We're going to get into some real stuff today. All right. That's what this interview is all about. So buckle up, guys. Get ready to talk about some of the real shit that is wrong with this industry. We're going to talk about it. We're going to get into it. So if you have been waiting for this type of interview, you are in luck because we're here to do it today. So Lee, welcome to the pod, sir. Go ahead and introduce yourself to the audience. Let them know who you are, what you're all about, and let's get into it, man.
Well, David, thanks, dude. I'm looking forward to this. You and I have had a couple, we'll call them enthusiastic, maybe, or passionate conversations about some of these topics. And now we're actually like writing it down, I guess, or capturing it. So, this could go sideways. It could be a lot of fun. But yeah, my name is Lee Tschetetter. I've been working in identity and security for more than 20 years. I think that there's a lot of opportunity for us to do better. I'm going to call it what it is as an industry and as professionals, as the people who are ultimately responsible for the success or failure of identity and identity access, identity governance. And yeah, I'm I have some opinions. Curious your thoughts on them. But I'm also, just somebody who is very self-aware of the fact that, like, I have been part of the problem at times.
Yeah.
And I also recognize that I can't fix it by myself.
Right.
I'm here. I want to talk to everybody about this. I think we have to fix this it's a team sport, right? So.
Yeah. Awesome, man. And listen, I wholeheartedly agree, right? I mean, I've said it at some points in time over the years on this podcast that I have definitely, I've been a part of some of the problems, and I'm glad to see that, to an extent, we are starting to fix some of the problems, but we do need to get better, right? I think that one of the things is that I will say here more recently, technology has given us the chance to truly address some of these problems and make it better. It's no excuse for how bad some of these problems have been, right? We could have fixed some of these problems a long time ago. Yeah. We have made the choice not to because capitalism. So we'll probably get into that. But let's start first with one of the topics we've been talking about, the enterprise SSO tax.
Yeah.
One of our favorite topics.
Yes. A topic that may never die. What we're just going to that I'll come back in a couple of years and we can have the same conversation, I think. And I think that'll be really good.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So for those of you that don't know what this is, and I'm going to kind of summarize it, and then Lee, correct me where I may kind of summarize it wrong though, but it's basically, it's where companies force you to pay for enterprise licensing to get true security features that should just come standard, for, you basically have to pay for security features, right? So to give you an example, right? Like say you want simple SSO for a product, any product, right? So you're looking to go to a SaaS product and it's like, oh, okay, well the price is $9.99 for the Pro package. It's $15.99 for the Advanced package and $39.99 for the Premier package, right? But none of those packages come with the ability for your small company to do SSO, right? Instead, you got to go with the enterprise package, and now you got to go with enterprise pricing, all just to get SSO enabled, to be able to federate in. And it's like, why? Why in the world are you getting charged a tax just to get enterprise license? We called it the enterprise SSO tax because it's like, so wait a minute, you want me to be secure, because that's what we want is security practitioners. Oh, be secure, do all these things, but you're going to charge me a tax for it when we've created all these standards and open standards. It goes, well, why aren't you using standards and all these things? So we want to ding you on one end for not using standards and not being secure. Right. Yet then we're going to penalize you and charge you a tax for being secure.
Yeah. Yeah. And it tends to be a lot of product-led growth products. It's one of those things like, hey, yeah, exactly. You said the $9.99 personal edition, I probably don't need SSO for that. Honestly, it's probably just mine. I'm just doing my thing. But as soon as I get into a team setting or some sort of a collaborative setting, now I need security. And that doesn't have to be the enterprise tier, right? That there's a lot of room between me as an individual and some sort of enterprise license agreement. Right? There's a huge window there.
Right.
And not only is that potentially intimidating because you now have to talk to sales and you have to go through contract process and legal process and everything else, it can often be impossible for a small team within even a large organization, right? Because now you've got to go engage all of these other teams. I want to use this tool. It's valuable. It's going to help my team be more successful or my business unit be more successful, right? I might just be in the business. I may not be in IT. And so I want to do it the right way. Sure. But if I'm going to have to go through this lengthy, complex procurement process versus put my credit card in the website and be done, which path are you going to choose? I'm curious, where do you think a lot of people end up?
They end up on the put my credit card in and let me just go.
And it's just one of those things. There was actually an interesting data point I saw the other day. OpenAI, right? One of the fastest companies ever to $1 billion in revenue and all sorts of statistics around OpenAI. They didn't add enterprise security features at all to the product until they had $1 billion in revenue.
Jeez.
So, it's kind of an afterthought to begin with. And then if I do go build those features, am I going to make that money back? Who's going to pay me for those enterprise features? Versus this attitude of, well, I'm building a publicly accessible application. It probably should have good security controls on it that everybody can use. And when I say federation too, and this is where I think a lot of people also get disconnected. A version of federation is social auth, like log in with Google, log in with Microsoft, right? The fact that there's not a login with Microsoft button on every site for all the corporate users that are using Azure as their identity provider kind of drives me crazy. Right? It doesn't require any setup. It doesn't require the business unit to go through the procurement process and everything else. Why isn't that just a button? That's one of the things I've always been curious about as well.
Yeah. And the interesting thing that, it's funny, like I think by the time this episode actually airs, I can literally hear Paul Lanzi in my head right now. So I know by the time this airs, I'm going to get a text from Paul Landsy about this. And I'm going to be very interested to see what side of the fence he lands on this. So Paul, text me, call me. I'd love to have you in this conversation. But so, in my Wayback Machine, right, when I was working at a company that will not be named because I won't talk about it for reasons, but I was talking to our CTO at the time, right? We were on this other side, and right, and we had to charge, this tax forward. But the reason why, I'm not saying it was a good reason, but I want to dig into this because of this cascading effect. We were using Auth0 for our authentication, right?
Oh, sure. Yeah.
So it was the whole, like, the ball had to be passed along somewhere. So Auth0 charged us per, customer tenant and authentication charge that we had to go towards. So then, for every customer that we signed on and for whatever they wanted to do, we had to pass that charge down. And I remember at some point we were getting ready to go through our renewals with Auth0, and I'm trying to remember what triggered this or whatever, but whatever it was, and I don't remember if we were like onboarding new customers or something, but whatever it was, the re-up was like just completely egregious. And so we had this doomsday clock that was coming up to where it was like, we had to decide what we were going to do, because it was either like a re-up with Auth0 at the time, and it was going to be like upwards of millions of dollars, right? Or like basically not do this functionality or figure out if we're going to go build it ourselves. Right. And it was like, we were kind of like, well, we're going to kind of have to do this because we're already offering this feature to our customers. We can't tell our customers, no, we can no longer do this, right? And lose that revenue for the customers. And at the time, we actually weren't charging our customers like a heavy lift for this, because we were just like, why? This just makes sense to go ahead and do this. So it was a nominal fee that we were charging. It was like another module in our product. So we necessarily weren't charging them for doing this. We were federating their users in. So we weren't really charging them for that, but it was a different module and other set of functionality we were charging them for, right? So we kind of just said, okay, we're going to charge you for this module. Part of that, let's just call it 10% of it is a setup charge, and we're going to handle this federation, and like, we're eating the rest of the cost. It's not that big of a deal to us. We'd rather have you as a customer. But it was fine because like the part we were paying Auth0 wasn't that bad. But on the re-up, it was like, holy crap, right? Now all of a sudden we're gonna have to go back to these customers and go, hey man, like every time they come in, like we're gonna have to start charging you because we're eating this huge, cost. And so, I remember us talking about this, and it's like, are we going to have to turn around, and now we're going to have to start tracking things that we never had to track before, and paying attention to our customers and telling them like, yeah, now we're going to have to come back and start telling you like, hey, per identity, we need to know about this, when we never had to have a conversation with our customers like that before. And so it's this whole thing of like, part of it, I believe, is that, when some products, they build out these stacks and it's like, okay, well, this isn't my stack, I'm using somebody else's stack. Sure. Right. And so then if they decide, right, that they're going to raise their price, well, it's like, well, crap. Well, then I got to raise my price. And so then, the ball just keeps getting passed down and passed down. But then it comes back to this point of, well, then what the hell was the point of us creating all these freaking standards? Like, we created these standards to make it easy to integrate. So like, what the hell?
Yeah. Well, actually, that's it's a similar question though to this. Like, there needs more value than just the standard, right? And in this case, the identity provider should be adding all sorts of value around multi-factor authentication or device assurance or some sort of policy framework or scalable directories, disaster recovery. There should be other business value that's being delivered there beyond, now I can do federation. And that needs to be quantifiable and measurable and everything else. The thing that I think we as an industry have done a poor job here is, well, a couple things. One, mentoring, building more identity people. I know a lot of identity people. They're all my age, which is weird. We're all like within a few years of each other because we all hit this kind of wave where identity became a thing and SAML became a thing. And a lot of us are there for SiteMinder or there for, or whatever, kind of interim stages we all kind of hit in the IT journey. And then what, right? Is there a lot of people that are being trained up in the identity space right now? No. And there's some organizations that are working to fix that, and I praise them for that. I think that's fantastic. We need to build a lot more identity awareness and knowledge. But the standard should be separated from the product.
Yeah.
As best we can, right? But the standard should be well known, should be easy. There should be great documentation, should be great examples, SDKs. There should be all these things. And I would love to see better participation from the vendor ecosystem as a whole, supporting this and saying like, hey, if you're an app dev and you want to integrate, SAML or OIDC in your application, here is everything you need to do it yourself. And when you hit the point of, oh, now I need the scalable directory, now I need multi-factor, now I need all of these other capabilities, give us a call. You already have our SDK integrated. It'd be super easy for you to go from there. But it doesn't start at free. And it doesn't start at guidance and advice and structure, right? It starts at, well, build your product on our platform.
Right.
If you don't build your product on our platform, then what are you doing? Like, what? I don't understand.
Right.
And again, I think we kind of skipped over the the beginning and we went straight to, you're now an enterprise product. Yeah, it's not your startup or anything else. You're an enterprise product. You have to have all these enterprise features. Well, no, like, why don't we just start with the ability of making it easy for people to do this, and for people that are intimidated by some of these standards and they're like, dude, what if it doesn't work? Like, how do I troubleshoot it? Anything else? That should just be documentation. That should be part of the standard. It should be part of the community. It should make that less scary.
Yeah. To your point, right? Like, showing my age, right? I remember when, when the group spun off to go create like Open LDAP and Open DS, right? And all those folks right now. And I want to say, if I remember correctly, right, that was if I'm accurate, that was like the genesis of like the ForgeRock people, right?
Correct. You got it.
And it was Open IDM, Open DS, and all that. And I remember how excited I was about that, because I was like, I used to grab like Apache Directory Studio like everywhere I went. Right? Man, I used to have that bad boy like on every laptop I had, because it was like at any given time I could have a directory and Open IDM, and so I could always be working and understanding like how to stand up an LDAP directory, how to do workflows, how to do identity management and all this stuff, whatever. And so like I had those concepts and understood how to do things, right? And to your point, I feel like we lost that. And if we still had that, then at minimum, right, at any given time, anybody could go and get the SDKs and go, okay, well, I got to go do authentication. Well, here, like, you can go stand up an LDAP directory, and here's these SDKs, and here's an open source, a governance and an access management and all these things. So here's all the things to go do it. And you can have a basic setup and understand how all this stuff works, right? Yeah. And this will get you this far. Right. Here you go, right? Now I need like advanced, federation across and disaster recovery and all this stuff, whatever. Cool. Now I go pay for that stuff.
Right.
But like, come on. Like, I just need to like
the foundation, right?
Right. Like, and
it's the knowledge foundation, the technology foundation, right? And it's fun you mentioned OpenDS and all those things, because I'm like, oh my God, Apache Studio. Wow. I haven't seen that in a minute.
And it just disappeared. I just remember it disappeared off the face of the earth. I just remember it was years ago now. I just remember I went to go look for it one time and I just couldn't find it. And I was like, where did it go? And it was just gone. And then, I stopped having to, code and do all this stuff anymore. So I was like, all right, I don't really care. So
you weren't supposed to give up that easy. You were supposed to go write a new one and publish it. And then we all would have been, you could have fixed this, David. I think that's what I just heard. So
you're absolutely right. I'm sorry to everybody. I apologize.
Thank you.
I listen, we said at the beginning, I will admit to my sins. I gave up. I'm telling you, I did. I was tired, folks. Okay.
I was tired.
All right.
Yeah. Well, but that's the thing too, right? Is that knowledge gap. And I think the idea you could have a playground on your laptop and really learn these things through trial and error and experimentation, and it was safe, and you weren't like, on the public internet. And there was also a long history of knowledge bases and everything else on LDAP, right? I mean, there was communities and sysadmin forums and everything else that could give you a lot of information and guidance around LDAP that I don't feel like had ever the same momentum, the same kind of drive that like SAML got. And partially because of adoption, right? Everyone had that LDAP. Literally every company on the planet had that LDAP, and very few of them had SAML. So there wasn't the drive for the community. There wasn't a lot of the momentum behind that. But then also chicken and egg, right? If I want to do SAML, but none of my vendors support SAML, then does it really matter?
Yeah.
Not really. How do I get that moving? I remember I was actually a security architect on the buyer side, and I wanted to federate some things. I wanted to get password lists, and this was in 2011, maybe 2010. And I was like, man, we have a lot of password resets. We have a lot of this stuff. Why don't we doing some more passwordless things? We had SAML, we had SPML. For those that remember, SPML was a standard that had good intentions, but was unusable, unfortunately. If you want some fun reading later, please Google SPML and go read the docs for it and tell me how you think you would use that protocol. I'd be very curious to hear. Thankfully, we got Skim, which is a much, much cleaner version of that. But the whole concept of this is I wanted passwordless. I really did. I was working with a non-technical workforce. Password resets were just killing us. We had all these third-party connections. Like, how do we just start connecting these dots? And I remember implementing actually Ping Federate back in the day. I was in some uncharted waters, and this was 6 years after Skim 2.0, right? We got to 20 applications federated, which was a miracle, by literally bullying our vendors into compliance. It was like it was threats. It was threats. I'm just gonna be honest.
I mean,
It wasn't like friendly, hey guys, it's cool. It was, what if I canceled my contract? And they went, oh, dude, you shouldn't do that. Oh, good. Okay, well, then we should get some SAML. And that's the kind of stuff that you do need some people that are willing to force some change. But at the same time, what is the motivation for those vendors if it's not customers and things that are forcing this?
Yeah.
And I think there is a bit of the SSO tax wall of shame that also needs to be part of this conversation, right? Customers are pushing this from I spend money with you, but there's also literally like a wall of shame kind of concept of, hey guys, if you're going to pick this technology, be aware you can't secure that technology unless you're willing to sign a contract and go through the whole process and be an enterprise agreement. And even if you have 5 people at your company that are going to use this tool, you better get ready for an enterprise agreement. That's intimidating.
Like so I did a standards episode like earlier in the year, right? And it was, Mike Kaiser, Paul Lanzi, Dean Sachs, right? And we just kind of walked through, what it takes to be on a standards body and adoption of standards and all that stuff. And again, God bless you guys and gals that sit on the stand. I can't do it. I don't have the patience.
I don't either.
I don't have the discipline. And I tried. I mean, I've been on a couple of calls with the IPSI stuff, and I'm really, and I still follow like the threads on IPSI and all that, and I just can't do it. But I keep coming back to this. Like, I feel like there needs to be, and I get it. There's the organizations. There's the organization behind OpenID, right?
The OpenID Foundation.
Yes, right. So. And I kind of feel like there has to be these organizations that it's like, okay, we're gonna come and create the standards, and I feel like they almost need to take another step to where it's like they almost have to be not only like get the standards together, but almost like implement the standards and almost kind of put products out there around this, like to get these things to get motion out there, because to just get the standards out there and expect the vendors to adopt it, it's always going to be this tug of war of the vendors won't adopt it because they won't adopt it until the customers ask. And as you just kind of give that, the vendors are going to wait until the customers force them to do it. Right.
Right.
And the customers are only going to do so when it's either in their best interest, or they're the big enough customers, or the customers that want to spend enough cycles to truly push those vendors to do it, and then have the time to wait for that to happen. Because even when you say, hey, vendor, I want this, right, you got to wait for it to go through their product cycle. They got to get it out, and then to that point, like, even if a vendor does implement it to a standard, are they going to implement to a standard, or are they going to take it and Microsoft implement it to their version of the standard, hence Active Directory? So like, it's this thing of like, I feel like they're in, I'll whatever, I'm pretty sure people will have opinions, and that's fine. Like, I welcome having the conversation. I feel like there should be some organization, like a true like reference architecture, right? Like, hey, here's the standards, and here is the company that goes and implements a reference architecture based on this. And here's where you can go out and see the reference architecture based on the standards that you can go and use and implement and go against. And that way you can kind of create that momentum around the vendors to go and push against, or customers can go and use to either use that to pressure the vendors, or when the vendors don't, go, okay, fine, I'll go use this, right? And it's kind of like the ecosystem within higher ed, right? I can't remember the names of it, but there's like 4 or 5 open source products within higher ed that they all use, right? That they got their own.
Yeah.
You know what I'm talking about? I can't remember the names of them right now, but there's a governance one, there's an SSO one, and they all use them, right? And it's, and higher ed's got this, and from what I hear, like, they're great products. It's just, higher ed's got the problem is they don't have the people to go and implement them, right? They're big lifts, but like, they've been in that space, for so long, and so they maintain them. They're kind of open source, but it's like, but you can, if you need to use them, it's like, here are the products that we use, but you've got at least a resource and other people you can go, like, how have you used it? How have you implemented it? Now, whether or not I've got the people here to go implement is a different story, but I've got references throughout the ecosystem to understand like how this works, right? So
the peers, right? And it's just not just references. They're people in your shoes,
right?
Which is infinitely more valuable.
Yes.
For me as a practitioner. And one of the things that I think the colleges, kind of benefit from is grad students. They have students that want to learn, need credits, need whatever, and are willing to spend the hours on these projects to do them for low cost compared to an actual, like, full security team in an enterprise setting. So yeah, absolutely. I think there's, to your point that you made about, like, kind of taking the standard to market. I did participate in the shared signals framework standards body off and on. I don't know how valuable my contributions were, but I joined several of the meetings over an extended period of time. And, it was a very good project. I actually really believe in the shared signals framework, and I'm still pushing for adoption on that in many angles, because our ability to communicate that something's wrong in the vendor ecosystem, I think, is also huge.
Yeah.
That ties into this. I think that's a separate podcast potentially even, but this idea that we all know something's going on, but we don't tell anybody about it. We have all sorts of information sharing bodies for government and EDU, financial services, the FBI with InfraGard. But if I know your account's compromised, I don't tell you about it. Does that make me a bad person? You know, like, when is it actually my responsibility to be like, yo, your account is like,
yeah,
real bad. Real bad.
Like, ooh, yeah, that's bad. I could probably tell Lee, but nah, that's cool. Like,
nah, he'll figure it out.
Yeah, you know, he'll figure it out eventually. Yeah.
And so, like, there's some good examples there, though, that Duo, oddly enough, built that as a go-to-market kind of message. They didn't just release the standard. They actually went and built content around it that was engaging. It wasn't just a standards document. I don't know if you've ever tried to read an RFC.
I mean, yes, and yeah.
Tried to read an RFC? Yeah, absolutely. They distilled that down into use cases, into problem statements, into all the things that help people understand why the hell it exists, what I'm supposed to do with it, how I'm supposed to interact with it.
And that right, okay. Oh, I'm going to piss so many people off with this. That right there is the problem, right? It's with the things with the standards bodies and all these things. It's like, dude, who the fuck are you writing for?
Yeah.
Like, what is this? Like, come on. Like,
there's a place for that. There should be a version of this conversation that is hyper technical and detailed, right? We need to have a standard, and to have a standard, you have to write the shit down. But at some point, the standard has to get turned into human conversational language. And I think maybe that's AI. Maybe AI. Maybe this is the first time in my life I'll actually say that we can use AI for that.
I think that is, part of the, the underlying elephant in the room for a long time with all of this, right? Is we still fundamentally as IT professionals, as tech professionals, as just nerds, like we don't know how to talk to people, period. Right. And it shows up in these things, right? And how we write these standards bodies and all this stuff, whatever. And you read this stuff, it's like, dude, like, come on. Like, and it makes it, it makes it hard to defend ourselves. It's like, guys, like, read this, like, come on, man. Like, no, like,
yeah.
It's like when you, it's like when you go and you got to go defend your little brother, and it's like, he called me a nerd. It's like, oh, okay, well, what were you doing? And then it's like, all right, well, you're not giving me much to defend here, bro. Like, help me out here, man. Like, come on.
Help me help you.
Right?
Help me help
you. Like,
you.
So I think that's part of it, right? So when the barrier to entry is these really heavy-handed written documents that it's like you read it 3 or 4 times and it's like, I've been sitting here for 2 hours and I've read 3,000 words and I don't know what I've done for the last 3 hours. So now, but I don't know what to go do, right? And it's like, so what am I supposed to do with this? Now, granted, like, for those of us who are really into this, we'll look at it and it's like, okay, I kind of get this. And it's kind of like anything else, is acquired taste. You read enough of them, a couple of times and it's, okay, I get it. It kind of starts to make sense. Whatever. It's kind of like, I don't know, like beer. Like you drink enough of it, and after a while, you're like, oh, okay. That taste starts to appear. And I guess reading these open standards, you just read enough of them, and all of a sudden, like magically, the words start to make sense.
No, I don't think that's true. I don't think that's true.
I was trying
beer, yes. Standards, no. I'm actually going to go. I'm going to contradict you on that one. But,
I was trying, but I think part of it is you're right. Like I don't want to say that we have to. They don't all need to be rewritten, but I think there needs to be an abstraction, a translation layer of like, okay, what does this mean, and go forth and do things. I do want to come back to like, the shared signals. I'm a big fan of it. I became a fan. I think it was it last Gardener, maybe the Gardener before, where they had like the little breakout sessions and they were showcasing the demos and all the people that implemented it and like showing like, and I thought this was super awesome, like showing the real use case demos of the different vendors and how they implemented it and like basically like, hey, here's how this would work. Vendor over here, vendor over here, vendor over here. I see an event and I'm going to send it across. And, you could like literally see the event and how each one could pick it up. And I'm like truly, this is how this needs to work in your ecosystem. Right. And again, history doesn't repeat itself, but it rhymes. Right. We've tried this in many different shapes or fashion over the course of the years. Right. This hub concept. Right. Of like being able to connect all of these things. Like me and Darren Rolls, like when we first bring up SPML, right? Me and Darren, we first met at, was it Digital ID World or something, like some crazy conference that doesn't exist anymore, on a coffee table on the back of a napkin, built out an SPML messaging bus hub, right? Mm-hmm. But basically passing identity data back and forth via SPML, but to this point of like, when events happen that are identity related, we need to be able to send these messages across to the different areas, right? And so it's going to be interesting with this as shared signals, starts to pick up. Are we going to see like this bus concept kind of come back? Is it, again, we're going to have the same thing. Are the vendors going to directly integrate, or are we going to see things in the middle? I wouldn't be surprised to see kind of MuleSoft start to pick back up again here in the next couple of years, right? Or some kind of integration tools in there to say, listen, here, I'll sit here, I'll listen to all the shared signals events and to kind of send them across, whatever it is. I don't care what happens, but I'm with you. Like, we need to start, all of these different vendors are noticing that shit is happening. We need to start saying like, hey, over here, I'm noticing that this login is risky as hell. I should probably tell CyberArk and crew like, when this login tries to access those credentials, should let you know that they tried 5 times to use this password and this login's coming in from China. So just letting you know, buddy. Yeah. Want to let you know.
Yeah. It's one of those things too that some vendors have built extremely capable engines for this stuff. I mean, Microsoft, for all their faults, has actually built an incredible set of analysis tools around your device and your sessions and where you authenticated, how you authenticated your thick clients, web clients, mobile, proximity. Like if you're running a Windows device and your phone's connected, you can do all sorts of like connected world stuff, real world physical security stuff attached to your identity stuff, which is, I think, awesome. Like I think I'm a big fan of that. I actually spoke at the Jamf conference in 2019 about how we need to connect identity and hardware.
Yeah.
My phone is always with me. If I'm in the room, my phone's there. So if you can see my phone, you know that I'm there. Simple as that. And there's an aspect of this where we need to share that. We need to be friends. We need to, take advantage of the fact that there's been billions of dollars investment over here. And that shouldn't stay locked up in there. And again, yes, there's value there for the customers and everything else, but the value to the ecosystem, the value to us as a community, the value to breaches and all these other things, the Verizon data breach report, we have the same problems we did 5 years ago and 10 years ago. Nothing's really changed. We have all this cool stuff, but it hasn't actually really changed anything.
Right.
Right. And that's the frustration for me with SAML, with SCIM, with OpenID Connect, whatever, is like, we have all these really cool things, man. You don't understand it because it's in a bunch of language you didn't want to go learn, and you shouldn't have to go learn. But if you did understand it, man, you'd be as excited as I would. Like you would love it. Like seriously, dude, like if you knew what this meant, oh man, you'd love it.
Yeah.
And that's the kind of stuff that I think we need to communicate, right? To your point. We love nerding out and everything else, but then we have to actually go talk to lesser nerds, and we're like, you weren't there You weren't there. You weren't there for SiteMinder. If you don't remember that, if you never wiped out a FSMO roll holder and took down a production environment, then, you're not one of us. How many domain controllers did you wipe out?
I never wiped out a domain controller, but I fired half of a company one time. So
Okay.
Got that under my belt.
I wrote a script that was supposed to handle a bunch of data manipulation in the directory, and instead I flipped a couple fields and everyone's information got corrupted. First names became last names, and then rules fired and mailboxes got created, and one typo, man. I mean, come on.
Listen,
I'm not responsible for that. It was a typo.
Listen, it's this is I don't always test, but when I do, it's in production.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, I mean, honestly, I tried running it not in production, and I couldn't figure out the credentials for the other domain, and I just gave up and ran it in production.
my excuse was, listen, I told you to create me a test domain with real data, but you didn't. So all right.
And you took away my open LDAP toolkit on my laptop. So what else was I going to do?
So there you go.
Yeah. I mean, it's your fault, not mine, obviously. Right.
Worked on my box.
It worked on my machine. Yes, exactly. The developer's mantra. It worked on my machine. So my machine did not get all of AD wiped out. So I don't know what you guys are doing wrong, but y'all are doing something wrong.
Let's just say after that, I always learned how to write any automation, any workflow, actually anything, any rule, workflow, script, anything that I ever wrote that took an action. I always write a undo for it. After that. Yeah, that was I aged about 5 years that night. That was fun.
Yeah, my fix was the dry run mode, where there was like a true false toggle at the top that I usually set it the right way, true or false, but not always. Usually though, I had it right where it would be like dry run true, and it would have a if statement that would skip the actual, I'm going to go delete all the users in your environment step and just report a log of I was going to delete this user. And that saved me several times, actually. Yeah. I think your idea is better though. Well, I know it's not, because if I would have deleted the users, undelete wouldn't have helped me in that case. So
yeah, see, I would always disable anytime there was a delete function. I would disable first, and then delete. I would disable first and schedule the delete at minimum a day later. I would try and push it off to maybe 10 days later or whatever. I would also do full audits, right? So I could see whatever the actions were. So at any given time, even if I did delete, here's every
right.
I would create my own audits, if I could, right? I wouldn't rely on whatever system I was using their audit. I would go find if it had an audit class, or I would go create my own audit class and go, here's every action that I'm taking and what I'm doing. So I could go pull it up and go, okay, what the fuck did I just do? And I could go pull it up and be like, all right, well, if I got to go recreate this, here's what I did. So, but I mean, it's just all stuff that you learn, that you don't think about until you do it the hard way.
Until you age 5 years in one day. Yeah,
exactly. And you're like, oh, okay, well.
But there's a lot of that comes out of just trial and error, and again, this idea that we don't give anybody these really simple sandboxes anymore, that the world has got more complex maybe than some of the stuff we worked on 20 years ago. Security is a completely different game than it was 20 years ago. And so how do you learn those things through trial and error? The worst case scenario with Skim is I set it up and then I don't set up a backdoor account or whatever. And now I'm completely locked out of the application. No one can sign in, and I contact support, which it's actually the most secure that application's ever been in my defense. If I screw up the SAML config and no one can log in, that app is secure for the first time in that app's history. Prove me wrong, right? I mean, that application no one's getting in unless they can find the random SAML cert that I chose that was the wrong one, and I have no idea where the private key is or who has it or anything else. So if you can reverse the asymmetric encryption, you're in.
I mean, you said secure it, so
Careful what you ask for, I guess, But we as an industry are guilty of that a lot too. We enforce security controls that are so strict that it effectively is a useless tool now, because we've taken all the good bits away and made it so cumbersome that we stripped all the fun out of it. And I'm guilty of that. I try not to be, but I am. Sometimes you just have to take away all their toys, which not everybody appreciates, but sometimes you just have to do it.
No. I mean, I think, we do. I mean, I will say and I've seen some stuff on Reddit, right? There's some groups there, not as much engagement that I would see in the past. And I think the other thing is all the vendors have, I mean, it was like that back then too, but I think it's even more so now. Like, all the vendors are so closed off, right? With all the knowledge is locked within the vendors now. Yeah. Right. Yeah. So, and I will, at least I will say, at least on the identity side, some of the vendors have opened up, their universities or whatever, and or at least they said they have. And I'm not going to point because I haven't really looked and seen how much of the courses and what there's in there. So listen, I think there's a lot that we can do. I mean, there's ID Pro, there's that is out there, and there's a great community. That there's other communities out there that are trying to do that, and so there are strides, but there's also, I think, from a vendor standpoint, we also just have to make things easier, mm-hmm. right? Like I know, honestly, for the longest time, we just leaned into like, oh, this is really hard. So, like we chose not to solve the really hard problems. And we just said, oh, we'll just make it less hard than it already is. Right. Sure. I'm going to say a quote, and I'm not going to name who said this quote, but it was like, we don't have to make it better. We just got to suck less than the other guy.
Sure. Yeah.
And I'm just like, all right, and that's the bar we're setting. Cool. Well, then that's what gets us to where we are today. Right. When now it truly needs to be, hey, how about we just truly, as technologists, like just solve your problem, right? Mm-hmm. Most of the people that are non-technical think we're magicians anyway. How about we actually just try and make magic happen for you?
Right. We don't have to explain it to you either, right? Outcomes are what people care about. And, the business cares about what end users care about. Like, security is so focused on the checklist, well, how, every single step, but the business is going, does it work?
Right.
Yeah. But yeah, you said all that stuff and that's great. And you have this 8,000 word dissertation on this thing, but does it work?
Right. I think we made it the businesses. We made our requirements the business's problem.
Yes. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So the stuff that we have to do and the things that we have to check on, and it's like, oh, but it has to do this and has to do this. And here's all the things that it has to meet in all these check boxes, and see how complicated it is. And it's got to do all these things. Like, yes. And that's how it's secure. And so we made showing our work the business's problem, to show how much it was doing. Yep. And that's how we showed like the complexity and all the magic and what we were doing. And we over rotated on that when all the freaking business cared about was just making it work. And I go back to, and we can kind of wrap with this. Like, I go back to like the very first demo, the very first time somebody showed SSO, I know exactly what happened, right? Was they sat down and said, okay, you ready? Click this button. Boom, you're logged in. And the business guy said,
Okay.
like, that's it?
Yeah.
And the person like lost their mind and was like, well, you know, I just, and we,
it was a cryptographically proven assertion using asymmetric encryption in your identity. And yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
Because that's the part that, right, we have different priorities.
Right.
We think that the encryption's cool, and we know that it's secure, and we know that asymmetric encryption, and oh man, the public key, private key, and yeah, it's vaulted and all this stuff. And they're like, yeah, so cool. Can I work now?
Right.
Can I just click on the thing and
that's it, man.
And that's the thing, is we have to take that burden off of them. I spoke at a conference here a couple months back about the same topic. It's funny you mentioned that it's your fault, David, that you had a bad password. You set a bad password on that site. So we got breached because you suck. What? What? I don't know. No, that's the wrong attitude. That's
right.
That's on us too, right? This is a
Yep.
thing that we as an industry are very much guilty of. Why didn't you turn on MFA? I emailed you 11 times. You took a security awareness training, and you know what that training said? You have to turn on MFA. Do you know what you didn't do? Turn on MFA. So we got breached, and it's your fault, and you're fired.
Yep.
What? No. That's none of my job description involves password management. I am not. EPM is not one of my job responsibilities. Okay. So like, it's your responsibility as my employer, as my IT department, as my security department, to make this easy for me and secure for me, right? That's your responsibility. That's your job description, not mine.
Right.
And we can't say, oh, the users are stupid or lazy or any of this other stuff, dude. Like, and the phishing thing, dude, like, I'm going to close on this because this, I get so irritated with many of my peers. I've had this conversation several times. If I ask you for your password 100 times a day, or a password for 100 times a day, for all the different things you do on your mobile device, different types of MFA, sometimes it's a push, it's a text, it's an email, it's a pop-up, it's whatever, and the 101st time you get asked to log in that day, you do it on the wrong system, is that your fault or mine? Is that honestly? Tell me.
No.
Is that, if I ask you 100 times a day, and this is MFA exhaustion attacks and whatever, but if I ask you 100 times a day to log in and you get the 101st one wrong, like,
yeah, no, it's a fair point.
And that's, the phishing email that they clicked on. And it's like, oh, big red warning. Oh, you failed the phishing test. It's like, okay.
It's a fair point. I'm not going to completely absolve the user, right?
Sure.
Like, I mean, come on now.
Okay.
Like, you context in reading, come on. Like, how often does the CFO email you asking them to wire you 1 million Apple gift cards? Like, come on. So now, where I will be more, is it empathetic? I don't know. It's late in the day for me. Is I will give credit that a lot of these phishing emails, with these LLM now, they are getting a lot better and a lot more targeted in context around where it won't be such a one-off crazy one, right? Where to be more in context, where it's like, okay, and then to your point, like, it's more in the context of like, yeah, I've been doing all this stuff or whatever, and that email comes in and it's more of like, I've been talking back and forth with my partner director, and now it's like, hey, for this partner, we need to go do this. Can you log into the vendor site to go approve? Mm-hmm. Okay, now I'm like, I'm with you, right? So
I'm not saying anybody's absolved of any responsibility.
Yeah.
However, we as a community, myself included, have often said, well, if this the users sucked less, then I wouldn't have all these problems. Like, come on, dude. Like, so I put everything in the context of my mom now. Would my mom be able to use this login flow? Would my mom be able to do this? And I'm like, nope, nope. You know? All right, well, guys, this isn't going to work. But it's a frame of reference for me. It's just like, I get the tech support phone call. Like, I know where I'm at.
And I think it's I think it's a cop out. And I said this recently, like, for some reason, we came up with this idea that enterprise software had to be different than commercial software, like, or like B2C software, like UX and experience and how we software, dude. Like, build it the same way that you would build any other piece of software. And like, if we're building, a B2C application where it's like, we're focusing on user growth and sign up and all these things, there's just a specific way we're going to build it. Now, granted, I get that in that aspect, we're going to be connecting with our users a lot more because they're going to be logging in. We're probably going to have daily active users, stuff like that or whatever. So we're seeing a lot more data and we can change things more, but it still doesn't change the way that we would build it. But it's just, I think there's just a fundamental way that we look at it, right? And that I think needs to change. And just quite frankly, just how we look at stuff, right? I just think there's this fucking block that we're just like, it needs to be this big clunky piece of thing. And I'm like, why? Like,
because that's how it's always been.
Yeah.
We do have I catch myself doing this more often than I'd probably admit to, where I'm like, well, you just do it this way. Like, why are you asking the question? Like, don't you have, LDAP directory? Like, what are you talking about? Where's the SiteMinder agent? Why isn't it installed on the server? I don't understand, right? I revert back to things that, I know worked in the past. And I get challenged often where it's like, well, why are you saying that? I'm getting asked by younger people, or I'm getting asked by people that don't have identity backgrounds and things that are like, well, why? And then I go, I don't know, actually. I actually don't have an answer to that. That's a very good question. I'm going to go figure out why, and I'll get back to you. Right? We're all guilty of that. But
yeah.
At the end of the day, I think the focus for us, kind of to pull a lot of this together is this idea that security is fundamental to everything we do. And we have to just make it the default. Secure by default is something we've been talking about with firewalls for 30 years and everything else, but we haven't done it with identity. We need to make it actually work for the business. They don't care about the RFC. They don't care about any of this stuff. A developer, a software developer that knows Python should be able to implement this stuff, whether it's an SDK or some good documentation without reading an RFC. There was actually a very popular OpenID Connect module on GitHub. This was about 10 years ago that actually didn't validate signatures. And a lot of people used it because they were like, oh, this thing's great. It works great. 100% of the time, you just set it up and it works every time. Well, because it was validating signatures, which actually does make it very easy to deploy. But in defense, that architecture is extremely easy to deploy. But there's a better way, right? And again, if we have the ecosystem behind some of these things, some of the identity people that live and breathe this ecosystem, supporting knowledge, projects like that, and helping turn some of that language into human readable things. We need like product marketers. We need that humanization layer for standards, I think is a good way to put it. Like, kind of summarize some of the things that we had talked about a minute ago, but like this idea that we need to humanize these things from a UX perspective, from an architecture perspective, communication perspective.
Yep.
How do we humanize human identity? How do we humanize human identity?
Somewhere Heather Flanagan is listening to this and screaming at me. So I hear you, Heather. I hear you. I'm going to get another text, an email from Heather Flanagan going, so when are you going to help me write this, David?
Well, Heather, you're welcome. And I appreciate you engaging David on this topic. And thank you for that.
Oh, man. This is awesome, dude.
Any any closing thoughts? Just you want to pontificate? I did my pontification. You want to do your pontification before we close it out?
I just listen. I'll say this: we have the next 5 years in identity, right? I think we have a real chance to make a true impact on this industry. Here's what I mean by that. There is going to be two things happening. One, there is going to be a shift. There are a lot of us graybeards. Quite frankly, we're done. And a lot of us are looking at the next phase and the things that we want to do. And so there's going to be some of us, kind of transitioning it out. And so I think there is going to be that phase of, looking at the next generation. That's part of why, ID Pro and things like that. I do think, AI and the way that what it's going to allow us to do from building different technology and looking at things differently is going to allow us to build tools and solutions in a much different way. And so I think we're actually going to have a chance to look at things and go, we actually can do things differently and better, but we got to be intentional about it. So let's actually take this time to look at it and go, let's challenge the norms. Let's challenge different things. So there's people that are younger that listen to this that are coming into it. Now's your chance to look at this and go, hey, I think there's a different way. There's a better way. I would challenge you to go for it and do that. And for some of us that have been this a while, challenge yourself. Some of the things that we look at and sometimes we think, that'll never work. Maybe it could. And maybe now's the time to look into that and do something a little differently. So that's my pontification.
Yeah. That idea would never work because it didn't work 20 years ago. It's something I'm definitely guilty of, right? Well, I tried that 20 years ago. Like, what do you mean? Well, things have changed, thankfully. So the fact that the world operates in a browser is something I think that I still don't appreciate enough either, right?
No.
So, all right, dude. Well, if we totally botched this and we need to record more sections or redo sections because we totally did not follow any sort of logical thinking of any kind, just, let me know. You know how to get hold of me.
All good, man. That's why we do everything in post, sir. I appreciate it, man. All right. There you have it. Awesome interview, man. Lee, I love that guy. It's been so fun kind of getting to know him, and I'm gonna have more conversations like that. I think it's just refreshing, right? There's a lot of things that we really need to take time and have a real critical look at the industry that we're in, right? And it's okay. Sometimes we have to look in the mirror at ourselves as well, right? Some of us have been in this a very long time, and we get stuck in our ways, and it's okay to call ourselves out sometimes and just say, maybe we're not as right as we think we are. So with that, you guys know what we do around here. We're going to wrap this up. Be good to each other. Be kind to each other. Love each other, especially this holiday season. We'll see you guys next time.
I'm focused, I can't stop. The hustle's all I know. I'm hungry, ambitious. My heart is on go. You in the presence of greatness. That's all you need to know.